was a nameless victim for 14 years.
A murdered mother found in a shallow grave at Lake Thunderbird.
The only clue to her identity, a tattoo.
But after a break in the case, her story is now coming together.
Our licensed investigator, Lisa Monahan, is pursuing new leads in tonight's Deadline.
In this secluded area of Lake Thunderbird, paths seldom cross. Few venture into the woods. And if they do, it's in search of shoreline. A place to lure something to the surface. But on this occasion, fishermen became caught up in something else completely. A terrible secret that someone had tried to bury months earlier. Not in Thunderbird's murky water, but in a shallow grave.
A Sunday morning, August 31st, 2008, 4 men were wrapping up a fishing trip, and one of them stopped along the way off a beaten path.
He discovered what was left of a woman's body, partially buried in this remote area of Lake Thunderbird State Park.
Let us know if you'll be out on that. Okay. Your location again.
The men notified a park ranger who called the Oklahoma State Bureau of Investigation to the scene at 120th and Alameda.
It was somewhere where someone would have had time and privacy to hide this woman's body.
From the looks of it, investigators believe she'd been there a while, 3 months, if not more.
Most of her body was just reduced to skeletal remains.
The fishermen had uncovered a murder. That investigators were sure of. But how she was killed and who she was? Those questions would be much harder to answer. They didn't have much to go on. Just a tattoo found on the small of her back. The only skin preserved because of how the killer positioned the body in the grave. The coroner believed the victim was Native American, about 5'5", in her 30s or 40s, and a mother. Hopefully her child or a relative would recognize the tattoo.
It's a sunburst, and so it's a rather large tattoo. It has a sun and some additional detailing around it.
Investigators shared pictures of it, but no one came forward. So the OSBI pored over reports of missing women. A forensic artist used an X-ray of her skull to try and recreate the victim's face, then sent it around to the media, and still nothing. They even added her to the deck of cold case playing cards they distribute to prisoners in Oklahoma, but to no avail. Investigators were frustrated.
It is really difficult to do justice for a victim when we can't identify the person. It's difficult to speculate on the mechanics of what happened.
Months turned into years, and more than a decade later, the woman remained nameless. In 2021, Special Agent Andy Hamilton picked up the trail again, and utilizing advancements in forensic technology, provided the media with a sketch of the woman and the promise of genetic genealogy testing. A year later, a break in the case.
The remains of a cold case victim have been identified 14 years after her death. Agents say genetic genealogy was used to identify Angela Mason, fisherman.
But OSBI then hit the mute button, citing state law that prohibits them from sharing details in an ongoing investigation. Turns out, no one ever reported Angela Mason missing, and OSBI had only given a vague timeline of her disappearance, last seen in Moore, Oklahoma in spring 2008. We'd have to try and fill in the gaps on our own, but at least with a name, we could start to tell her story. She went by Angela Richards as a student at Putnam City West High School. Classmates remember her as friendly but quiet. By age 17 in 2000, she was pregnant, expecting what would be the first of 4 children.
She was a beautiful mom. And
Several months into motherhood, Angela, still a child herself, made the decision to give the baby up for adoption.
And I actually got to see pictures of her while she was pregnant with me.
We tracked down Angela's firstborn, Reagan Colley.
I'd always had a desire to find her.
She tried to, with no luck. Most of what she knew about her biological mother came from notes found in a baby book.
Her keeping that baby book showed, like, she did care for me, and she did enjoy the process of having me, but she had to make the difficult decision to give me up.
Angela kept visitation rights and remained a part of Reagan's life until someone took hers. But Reagan wouldn't learn her mother was killed for nearly 15 years. Instead, she anguished over unsettling questions raised by Angela's family, including whether Angela had simply abandoned her.
So I kind of wanted to find her to answer those questions.
She also wanted answers to the bigger questions: who and why?
I want to be able to look at the person who did it and try to figure out, like, why did you feel the need to do this?
Our search for possible suspects and motives in this case led us from Oklahoma to a small town in Florida. What we found there, plus new clues in part 2 of this investigation, tomorrow night at 10. On Deadline, Lisa Monahan, Oklahoma's own News 9.
Reagan Colley tried to find her biological mother for 14 years.
I want to be able to look at the person who did it and try to figure out, like, why did you feel the need to do this?
Only to eventually find out she'd been murdered.
Angela Mason's body turned up in a shallow grave at Lake Thunderbird in 2008.
She remained unidentified until 2022.
Now, our licensed investigator Lisa Monahan is following leads in her case.
From Oklahoma to Florida, part 2 of tonight's Deadline, Shallow Grave.
In search of a possible motive in the murder of Angela Mason, we spoke with family and friends, looked into any past mistakes, or scored lovers.
I was friends with Michael Gaynor. Michael was the father of Reagan, which is their first kid they had together. Several years or months after the adoption, they had another child.
The romance didn't last. By all accounts, they remained friends, but it's not clear how the friendship stood at the time of summer. Whatever Angela's relationship to Michael was, records show she married Adam Mason in Arizona in 2005. They settled down in Moore, Oklahoma, and had 2 children of their own. The marriage didn't last long. Mason filed for divorce April 25, 2008. I asked him why, but he wouldn't reply. I pulled the file and quickly discovered something very suspicious. Adam took steps to expedite the couple's divorce in June 2008, after she'd gone missing. What's more, Angela's signature was on the divorce decree dated September 18, 2008, the month after her badly decomposed body was found. Could she possibly have signed it before she was killed? Her signature on the next page, the child support agreement, raised even more questions.
At the bottom of the G, there's a large loop.
So we called in a handwriting expert. David Parrott is a forensic document examiner with a long history of working with law enforcement. He compared what is believed to be Angela's genuine signature with the one on the document.
Whoever did this question signature made a lot of mistakes. They're glaring mistakes.
He analyzed how each letter connects with the next, the curvature or angle of the characters, and if the signature seemed smooth or unsteady.
One of the first things I noticed was that there was tremor or shakiness in the line.
He found numerous discrepancies and highlighted some of the significant differences.
Whoever drew this put the gap in the wrong place. It's apparent from looking at the question that the person was trying to simulate the shapes of the letters. That's a very important deviation.
including unusual spacing or connections in letters, and evidence the questionable signature was slowly, if not carefully, drawn.
It didn't take very long when I started seeing letters that were connected that shouldn't be connected. If Angela Mason had done this signature, you wouldn't see her changing where the letters are disconnected from one another.
He's confident it's a forgery, but can't say with any certainty who did it. However, he was not surprised. Adam, the other signer, has a criminal history, including burglary, obstructing an officer, eluding police, and forgery.
It had characteristics that whoever did this had done it before.
Also suspicious was Adam's behavior, according to Angela's family, immediately following her disappearance.
He was ripping up the carpet out of the house right after she took off. And he said that he was done with it and he was going to sell a house.
A check of local property records, and we discovered he made good on it in 2011. The house sold for $50,000 less than they paid for it. I looked him up and found records showing he's been living out of state since then.
Following that lead, we tracked him down here to Florida in a small town just outside of Panama City. He never answered my messages. Hopefully, he'd answer the door.
We've come all this way to talk to you about Angie. We'd just like to ask you a couple of questions about her disappearance.
Adam didn't answer, so we checked court records in Florida. Although there was nothing new, he has 3 protective orders accusing him of threatening to harm, if not kill, women in Oklahoma. In prison, he was also recommended for anger management. But here in Florida, I only found where he filed for $30,000 in back child support from Angela in 2018, 10 years after she died. So many questions. So I tried him again.
At the tone, please record your message.
I'd like to visit with you about your ex-wife. You know, everyone is pointing the finger at you, and I just want to get your side of the story.
Instead, I'd have to settle for the unexpected return call from a man claiming to be his brother, John.
So I'm calling you on his behalf. You've sent him several he does not want to talk to you.
I don't want his silence to be misconstrued.
He said anything that you have to say, you can say to me, you can speak to me, but...
Nobody reported Angela Mason missing. That would be my first question for him. When did he last see her alive?
He would tell you they got into an argument, it went south, and she left.
Was that before or after he filed for divorce?
I don't remember.
And that's why I want to speak with him.
John was little help in clarifying the timing of Angela's disappearance, but he insisted his brother thought Angela just ran out on him.
The only thing that he said is that he was talking to the father of her daughter,
Michael Gaynor, who committed suicide a year after Angela's disappearance. That's also what Adam Mason told the OSBI, as well as claiming he'd been traumatized by the recent developments in the case. But none of that explains how the signature of a dead woman ended up on his divorce papers.
It's not adding up. It doesn't make sense to me.
It was a long time ago. I do think there was a moment where they did meet one more time and she signed papers after he left. I do think that happened, but I don't 100% recall if that is correct or not.
He is, however, 100% certain Adam Mason has no interest in answering a reporter's questions.
We'd rather not dwell on it. I think that's what it comes down to for him.
And what that means for Angela's oldest daughter, Reagan.
She's probably the hardest person I've had to mourn.
She may never know the truth of why she lost the opportunity to develop a relationship with her biological mother.
I'd always grown up wanting to meet her, and then to find out that that chance had been taken from me, it was the most devastating loss. There's a part of me that has ease, kind of finding my peace in knowing that the woman that I saw in kind of a horrible light is now in a beautiful light.
On Deadline, Lisa Monahan, Oklahoma's own
News 9.